Good morning, good evening, good middle of the night, wherever you happen to be in the world right now. Welcome to the officially unofficial presentation of what is essentially that losers bracket final, that semifinal, whatever you want to call it. It's time to determine who is going to be going to the grand final matchup. My name is Maximilian Thor von Neumann. I also go by Formal Casting. Joining me is going to be Nymira and Middlecott. We're going to have a little discussion about what to expect in this series today. But first things first, cheesy introductions. Let's start with Nymira. How are we doing today?
Doing awesome and much better for being here on the LJL OU broadcast yet again for one of these great matchups that we get to see in the playoffs. The later and further it's gone into this playoffs bracket, the more spicy these predictions, matchups, and everything else have gotten.
Yeah, absolutely. There's been some twists and turns along the way. I think it was kind of called the prediction nightmare, if I'm not mistaken, earlier ago. There was tears, screams, a little bit of bloodshed. I don't really want to know where that came from. Middlecott, maybe you can enlighten me there.
Well, I don't know. I was getting my nice 9.5 hours sleep last night, fully refreshed and prepared for what I think is going to be an interesting series, not just for the teams participating, but for the sort of the heart and soul of the LJL. Obviously, if AXIZ are able to make it to the finals from here, it'll be massive for them. DFM missing out on Worlds for the second year in a row. I can't bear the thought, really.
Yeah, it would be tragic for a team that's kind of been built up as this super team for the region. And throughout the season, that looked to be the case. However, in that winner's final, everything was going their way. And then those rascally jesters, I suppose, were able to throw that spanner into the works and get themselves to that grand final. On the other side, though, AXIZ, they're coming in today with the longest winning streak out of any team within the LJL. So truly, anything can happen. That's right. That is the matchup. You are not hearing it differently. It's going to be DFM taking on AXIZ. And in order to break this matchup realistically down, we got to go to the top. Literally in this situation, as we take a look at our first matchup that we're going to be looking in on, it's going to be Ebby versus Ino. And I'm really curious to see how this one's going to play out.
Yeah, Ebby, obviously a massive veteran in the LGL, has been the best top laner in this league for damn near a decade at this point. Ino coming in, obviously great experience himself, but not quite the same level of performance. However, in playoffs has definitely been fulfilling the role that he needs to on AXIZ. A little bit of a weak side top laner that plays some of these more enabling picks, but matching up against Ebby, it's really difficult for me to see a way that the DFM top laner doesn't just kind of roll over this matchup.
Yeah, it feels like that top lane could be a bit more one-sided. And when you kind of go down the rift into the mid lane and we sort of take a look at that Arya matchup as well against Megamin, it feels like it's almost potentially more of the same.
Do I hear bells? Church bells? The Church of Arya returns once more, but it's not necessarily in jubilation because of that Juggernaut match loss. But this player, Arya in the mid lane, has probably more brute mechanical strength than any other player that we've ever seen in the LJL. You can see on his stats there, he has been crushing lane, playing all sorts of different picks. And the thing which was really stood out to me is that Arya was shouldering a lot of bans whilst also putting out those numbers. Megaman on the other side, Spring was not really the best debut split for this player, but they have become more and more assured of their own performances. And they've started to put up some big numbers by themselves. That 11.3 KDA really standing out to me. And this mid lane, if Megaman can hold his own, well, we saw what Rascal Jessica could do if they managed to stabilize that matchup. They could take games. They could take a series.
Yeah, absolutely. That could be, I guess, one avenue for sure that AXIZ can go on. And maybe when you look at those numbers, there's a little bit of hope in the win-streaking underdogs, a sentence that doesn't make sense. But that then even carries over furthermore when we carry back onto the bot lane as well. I mean, I'm going to get a little personal here. Honey was kind of my pick for MVP from the start. Hoglet, though, pretty strong in his own right. I feel like out of all the matchups, this could be the closest one.
Yeah, obviously, Honey, the superstar ADK for AXIZ, and Hoglet, their jungler, who loves to get stuff done in the early game. I think if we're talking about win conditions, it has to be these two players for AXIZ. If Ino can sort of stop the bleeding in the top lane and Megamin can stand up, that's great. But Honey and Hoglet are your real game winners for AXIZ. You just have to look at that DPM stat for Honey. In playoffs, he has averaged 908.6 damage per minute. Obviously, they're yet to be defeated, but even so, that is still a ridiculous stat
That's like
from
2 players.
Yeah,
like
that's
2 players in one.
players worth of DPM. From someone that potentially an MVP candidate for the split if the matchup goes AXIZ favored in this series. So I think we really need to watch out for those 2 players from the Narble team because they can really throw a spanner into the works of DFM.
Yeah, Honey has been incredible to watch from start to finish, but when you kind of go pound for pound mechanically, maybe not necessarily always in the bot lane, but it always has felt like that Detonation it can match up in these areas. And speaking of matching up, it's also important to look at what sort of matchups we could be seeing today as we take a look at some of our key picks that are going to be highlighted as we play this out. You can see a lot of that focus is actually on the bot lane and I guess a little bit in the jungle as well.
And when you have a player like Honey on the Rift, that is going to happen. We see, of course, those playoff records on there too. Detention FocusMe only playing the single best of 5, falling down from that Juggernaut match in the 1st and 2 seed face-off. AXIZ have just blown out the lower bracket, though. We thought it would be a competitive match versus V3. They made it look anything but that, particularly looking towards that Jinx and that Aphelios, and the Thresh, very importantly, having some important implications to Rakan, which seems to be very blind pickable unless it's into that Thresh. These picks that we put on screen are the ones that we feel are going to be the real movers and shakers in that pick and ban phase. And you're right, most of it is about, can we have a support that can support a hyper carry for someone like Utapon or, of course, Honey?
Yeah, it is going to be, I think, a fiery series, that is for sure. But some of that comes from whenever AXIZ has been involved. Look, I'm going to be straightforward. At the start of this playoff run, this was my pick for the Grand Finals appearance. I always believed AXIZ could make this run. I just didn't think they'd be going up against the raid boss so soon. Although, realistically, are Detonation actually the real raid boss right now? Or is it AXIZ? I'm not too sure. But that's why we did go through our predictions. So I'm going to be very curious to hear what you two have to think about this one. We'll start with you, Middlecott. Who's taking this series and why?
I don't think I'm going to make many friends with this prediction, but I actually reckon AXIZ will take it in a 3-2. I think Detention FocusMe haven't had the best time adapting to meta changes after long breaks. We saw that at the start of the split where they had that hangover from MSI, and then coming into the matchup versus Rascal Jester, I don't really think they showed the adaptability that you necessarily need. AXIZ, though, have been on a complete hot streak, and whilst I do think that they're going to be losing games today, I think they're strong enough, their game plan is solid enough for them to actually push through and take the series.
That is a bold statement, and hey, you might not be making friends elsewhere, but you're making a friend with me right now. I'm not saying I agree or disagree. I just really like watching this team play. So if they were to get to the grand final, I think that would be pretty hype. Nymira, what are you thinking? Are we riding the AXIZ hype train tonight?
Well, first of my thoughts was, I was just going to contain my laughter as Middlecott's proclamation of AXIZ fandom set off everyone else in the back room to laughter and jeers and everything like that. We'll see who gets the last laugh in this game. And for me, it has to be Detonation FocusMe. I don't think it's going to be 3-2. I don't think it's going to be 3-1. It's going to be a clean sweep for our greatest of all time players in the LJL. I think that DFM are going to sweep the floor with AXIZ.
I mean, that's a bold statement, and I really do wish I could disagree with it. However, I look, when my back is against the wall, my heart might be with AXIZ today. I believe in that underdog story. I believe in that run, and I believe sharks can be kind of cute if you paint them in the right light. However, there's no way that Detonation misses out on Worlds 2 years in a row.
I don't think Narbles are sharks.
Oh, is it? It always looked like a shark to me. It has teeth.
Many things have teeth. Turns out koalas are sharks. Who knew?
Look. Can we bring up the Honey and Hoglet screen real quick, just because it has like a good showing of that logo? We need to break this down.
Okay, so what we're seeing there, flat tail, so it's a whale, and then you've got that big spike. So it's either a unicorn or it's a narwhal. Given the fact that it's clearly an aquatic animal, I think that rules out a unicorn. So
I feel like we've got, but that face is not a whale face. That is a shark jaw and shark facial structures.
It's not the face of Mercy either. We'll see.
the horn coming out. And no, it's not the face of Mercy. That should be worth noted. I don't want to concede this one, just like I don't want to concede the fact that they're probably going to be losing this series. However, I kind of feel like we have to in both. Yeah, I am going to go. I'm siding with the Detonation side. They're probably going to be winning this series at the end of the day. That said, there are two people who are getting keen, I feel like, to call the action in this one. They said, hey, we'll be ready 5 minutes to the hour. Well, that's where we're at right now. So casting our series for tonight is going to be initialized as well as Masked Swan. Boys, take it away.
Woo! Thank you so much, guys. Yeah, fun fact, guys. Back in the Middle Ages, they thought that narwhal horns were unicorn horns, and they used to sell for a lot of money.
Yes, they did. Yes,
there
yes.
you go.
Sailors upon their
I'll say
tragedies.
formal a little bit there. You know, maybe way back in the day, if he had the knowledge of a medieval knight, then maybe it was a unicorn. Maybe back in the day. Anyway, it's not a shark, and we're going to talk about this series. I'm initialized. I'm joined by Swan. We have got ourselves a very exciting series to get through, namely AXIZ versus Detention FocusMe. This was not necessarily the matchup we were all expecting to see.
No, not remotely at all. Like this was the matchup we were expecting. Well, we were expecting the V3 repeat, right? They were expecting the V3 versus DFM, the historic matchup we've seen multiple times before. How playoffs always run. V3 are meant to be the finals team.
Yeah.
How did AXIZ even get here, initialize?
Well, this is the best finish they've ever had in a season. Before this, like, they pretty much in nearly half their splits ended 8th. The best they've had outside of that is a 5th place finish. They have very rarely made playoffs. This is like the 3rd time they've made it in their organization's history. They have struggled, and then suddenly this season, out of nowhere, with a team of rookies plus some, a couple players from the LJL who hadn't really done that well before, and Hoglet had stuck around. Honey came over from the Hawks, where the Hawks had been really struggling last year as well, and
that's for
something clicks. Honey gets to do 2 players worth of DPM. Was it 900 plus? We're saying over playoffs
something
right
along
now.
those lines.
Hoglet has kindred games like he did versus V3 in game 2, which was really exciting to my heart, of course, as a big kindred player. But, like, that was the kind of stuff that's come on and made AXIZ a little bit of a darling, really, for the viewers and us here and over in the LJLOU. This is a team that there's a Cinderella story here, Lexi.
Oh, absolutely. This is a team that not only in a V3 AXIZ matchup did Megumin and Honey both have the highest DPM any professional game that happened, but this is a team that has gone on a 6-0 tear through playoffs, but we predicted them way back at the beginning of this summer split. Initialize, you, me, and Nymera, we sat down on our podcast, we broke down our predictions, and none of us predicted AXIZ would even make it to playoffs. The fact that they were 3rd, the fact that they have had a dominant performance through this, expectations be damned. These rookies came along and showed that they can support some veteran players in this league, and these veteran players weren't even really veterans. Honey, first split was last season in 2020.
A journeyman, really, not really a veteran. Yeah,
exactly. And Hoglet is the only technical veteran. Had some success over in the LLA on All Nights a few years back. At this point, hadn't really broken out ever in the LJL, and suddenly this is their season. Suddenly everything comes together, and going against DFM in the semis after they had a questionable juggernaut match, which we've fully broken down in our podcast. I'm very hesitant for AXIZ, even though everything just seems to be coming together for them.
Yeah, I agree. It is a Cinderella story, but that's what it would take, a little bit of a fairy tale. And a lot of things to go right. You need Hoglet to really strip the early game. You need Honey to be having the kind of performance he has done beforehand, and then you need those
not
solo
get
lanes
targeted. Yeah, absolutely.
Right, and you need those solo lanes to hold up to the laning might of the likes of Arya and Ebby. That is hard work. I think anybody who's played these guys can say. I mean, that comes true of people all the way up to the international stage. Damwon Kia were pushed to the very edge by these guys, the reigning world champions. You're looking at, Cloud9 dropped games to these guys. They really can
Arya beat Perks in lane. Technically, we can say that.
Yeah. And at which point, we've also got to start to potentially talking a little bit about, the fact that DFM did lose the Juggernaut match, right? Like, there is
Well,
the reason we're even having this conversation is because DFM are in the match, and there is just that, that hint of concern. Like, looking back, we've kind of all said that, okay, the match wasn't like as dire as we expected from like having seen, oh my god, DFM have lost, the sky is falling. It's not quite that bad, but it certainly not what you'd call good either.
no, absolutely not. I mean, I think I want to go back to that first point you set up for me there. DFM versus AXIZ in those solo lane matchups specifically.
Oh, sure.
We
Yeah,
already
yeah.
saw that way back in Super Week, and it wasn't pretty. Megumin didn't have a great time versus Arya. The only player really in the LJL that has actually given Megumin some serious trouble. Ebby and Ino in the top lane. Again, Ino has been able to kind of play this weak side, very Nap-esque, if you know the CGA top laner. He plays this weak side better than almost anybody else. He was potentially just on the official stream just now. I struggle to see this because it went badly last time, and DFM angry is a whole nother scary kettle of fish. And absolutely, you are right. They did lose that Juggernaut match, but there were certain parameters around that. 2 of the games that DFM had felt very convincing, and some of the other ones, well, they probably should have taken game number 2. Game number 5 was a level 1 strat. Game number 4, I guess. Oh no, game number 3 is technically the one I'm like, Rascal Jester won that one probably fair and square. Where does that leave us with DFM kind of sitting in this lower bracket match? I'm imagining angry. I'm imagining they want blood.
Yeah, I kind of expect so, and it's also one of those things where we had this kind of conversation before as well. We were sort of talking about sometimes you win a lot, and then you come into a break and you prep things and you work on new things, thinking you've got some things kind of down pat, and then another team comes in and goes, yeah, those things you thought were fine are actually exploitable. See those sort of 10 to 15 minute mark in things like game 5 for like the level 1 in game from Rascal to the 10 to 15 minute marks in game 3 as well. DFM kind of drop a lot of kills as well. And you can kind of see what happens, occasionally a team as good as Rascal Jess, particularly in the way they team fight, can exploit weaknesses if they are, they're a caliber of team to be able to do that. And, what would you would hope as if you were a DFM aficionado would be to say, okay, well, those things you didn't realize were chinks in your armor, you've got a week to sort them out, to look over the footage and get things sorted. And they'll have to
longer
see
than a week.
Actually, 2 weeks. 2 weeks absolutely was back in the 21st of August, way back then. So they've had that time to try and shore up some of those flaws as they stood and try and fix them for this matchup. And I think I'm probably agreeing with a lot of the cast. I suspect DFM are going to be able to do it, but I'm hoping AXIZ at least put up a fight. Seems like the official stream agrees with it's just a wall of DFM predictions over on the official stream.
Let's make sure that gets shown, because I think that sums it up perfectly. Outside of Middlecott doing Middlecott predictions, he was a Crest Gaming Act aficionado and fan, and would follow them into Mordor and probably further for some reason, obviously siding with the AXIZ. He's more than allowed to. Obviously, though, us 3 founders, we're all going DFM, and I believe a lot of the other backroom staff over here at the LJL Officially Unofficial are also doing that as well. DFM are just on kind of a tear, and they lost a series that no one expected. Now, obviously, it's very important that they did lose that series, so how does that progress the rest of it? The other thing is, there is a slight caveat in AXIZ's story of getting here, and that important fact is they have played 2 teams in a row that have had substitute players. Remember, when we had that first round versus Crest Gaming Act, we had Kaito, who has been a promising Academy player, actually, while we've been having Academy. But it's still not even the top of Academy quite at this moment in time. Kaito is a very promising talent, but is going to struggle, and he's no Nation, who obviously had to play in that support role. Obviously, coming against DFM, Unica, against V3, Unica was in the jungle, and Hoglet just seemed to have his number as well, especially when you already had 3 matches to actually go back and watch Unica play when they played against the Hawks. So, AXIZ, they've had a slightly easier time than I would say could have happened. Obviously, Hawks just didn't show up on the day, so they got a slightly easier run. And the Fukuoka SoftBank Hawks Gaming, that's where you look at it and go, but they got 3-0 by V3 Esports. Go back and watch that series, because just looking at the scoreboard, it doesn't put a fair picture on what actually happened throughout that series.
No, exactly. And that's what's making me a little bit nervous for AXIZ in some ways. Is like there have been some caveats like double substitute best of fives they've had to deal with in a row. Like that's
That's unheard of
a bit
in the
unheard of.
LJL.
Yeah, that's a little unheard of, and it does put things in an unfortunate position, really. For well,
And a
well, it's
unique
a very
one.
fortunate position for them. It was really unfortunate for the teams that had to go through with it. But in some ways, AXIZ have taken the opportunity and run with it, and that's great for them. But this is another caliber of test. If they want to prove that they if they want to dispel those doubts, saying, "Oh well, they kind of got here because of substitutes," and that's not really fair to their caliber of play.
It's not.
Have played very well, but if they want to dispel those doubts, slay the dragon, kill DFM, prove us that you're worthy of going to the finals. I just think this dragon has got a few too many heads and is breathing a little too much fire.
Not only do I believe that's the case, I believe it comes down to more standard things that you can kind of put down and put numbers to. Let's just think about it. Our lovely colleague of Melvin Izzle, or otherwise known as Callum, he broke down a lot of the stats around these players and teams. AXIZ, they're literally doubling their playoff statistics every single round. They keep going further. Whereas DFM, no one comes remotely close in the LJL for the tenureship that these players have. They have played more playoff series matches than anybody else combined. If you added a whole team, you would need a whole team to match 2 members of DFM. They don't miss playoffs, remember, initialize. This is playoffs where LJL, you had to be a top 3 team. DFM always have been a top 3 team. DFM are the most dominant team in the LJL. And AXIZ, this is a well and truly David versus Goliath scenario. And if you want to fight, become that David. Defeat Goliath. And hopefully it's more of the picture book story, not the sad everyday telling us that actually David was favored and Goliath was probably in a sadder circumstance than we actually realized. Shout out to Everyday Cast and the VCS crew.
Yeah, I do feel really sad, of course, the VCS guys. They're in a bit of a difficult position with this one, but
our hearts go out.
Exactly. But absolutely, Everyday's wisdom lies with us still, and that's an important thing. And also at this point, it's worth sort of like having that conversation as well, that we've got these lineups coming up. We're kind of getting closer to game time as it stands, and no changes here. That, according to members of the analytical community, probably the absolute top lineup you could have got for a region, considering import laws. Like, there is no other place, if you consider just a local talent or just a talent you could get, that is about as damn good a roster as you could possibly get ever. It's pretty insane for DFM. And you look over at AXIZ, this is a scrappy team of, frankly, nobodies who've come in and done an amazing job. Come up this far to do as absolute most as they can, and they've made it at least a 3rd place. They're looking for more.
Yeah, and during this playoff series, I have to imagine AXIZ couldn't have ran hotter than the sun. They are, to use a poker analogy, they are well and truly running hot. Like, everything is rather fortuitous for them. They find the right engages. They haven't actually been seen what it looks like to lose a match in a playoff series. They haven't even experienced what losing is like for several weeks here initialized.
Yeah.
We know that the players like Hoglet, like Honey, well and truly carry the mental state of the team of AXIZ. But we know in those post-game interviews, even after 3-0s, certain members of the rookie squad go, "Oh, we were really nervous, but winning really helped kind of soothe those nerves." What happens when you don't get that? What happens if you do get that and DFM come at you twice as hard a second time round? What happens when things get changed up that were out of your control that you didn't know? This is DFM. These are curveballs. These are this is the team that will go, what about if we just do like Silas top instead? And they go, that's Aria's champion though, and they go, nah, Ebby's gonna play this. We're gonna play something crazy in the mid lane, and then it's just like, and then people just minds start exploding. This is what DFM can do. They've always had the ability to do this. I believe they just didn't want to do it against against Rascal Jester, and now they're gonna do it, and they're gonna look to Rascal Jester and go, "We're coming for you. We're coming for that crown. V3 took it from us last year. We're here for it this year."
Yeah, and let's look over a little bit then to see, well, how AXIZ could potentially stop that, potentially get away with
Absolutely.
it. And obviously over on the official stream, they're highlighting the junglers right now. And I think in
Listen,
fairness for Hoglet, there's a good reason for that. We had him on our pre-game graphics too, because Guy's been an absolute monster. He is the leader in things like goal differences at 10. Second only, or just behind him, is Steel. You look at things like vision score and DPM, both these junglers pretty closely matched, but Hoglet taking the edge in those DPM numbers right now. And if Hoglet can get things going early, get disruptive, stop the kind of just straight up laning that surely favors DFM, at least on paper, we'll see how things actually work out in game, then that has to be step one in getting AXIZ to a point where they can look for some victories in this series.
It should be mentioned, obviously, that we're not aware of if those stats are counting just playoffs or just coming in, but we've got pick and ban phase, and I'm excited! Woo!
You love to see it. Lexi's already hollering, and I am ready to get shouting as well. We've got ourselves DFM over on the blue side. Check out that coach as well. Their support from Spring. Kazu back in his rightful role as the coach. Over on the side, it's AXIZ alongside Q being their coach, and we've got a couple bans coming through already. Viego and Jinx banned out for DFM. On the other side, it is the perma bans versus DFM. You do not give them LeBlanc. You do not give them Aurelia. Zig's final ban from DFM makes a lot of sense as well.
Yeah, these are just some of the high priority bans that have been coming out. Obviously, the only one that did go around, last time we saw a ban exactly like this kind of scenario going along, they immediately first picked that. That's during Super Week. Remember when Udabomb first picked that, and then Ebby and Arya had an amazing performance in the solo lanes. This is currently chalking out very similar to that Super Week match way back over in week number 5, game number 6. AXIZ, when they responded, last time they got to kind of respond with kind of more a scaling style, so they went with the Varus last time, so I'll be interested to see this. They are going to go with that Renekton, but we know Ebby loves to always pick Gnar into Renekton matchup, so it's going to be interesting to see the direction we are going with. AXIZ are actually doing very similar to how Rascal Jester actually drafted with this Leona pick. It was very common actually for Rascal Jesters to do this against DFM, so taking a leaf out of RJ's book, AXIZ looking to try and get a bit of that Jester luck.
They are, of course, DFM perma-banning things like Viego. They don't really want to play it. They want to pick for other kinds of power picks. Instead, they're locked in the Aphelios first. They're going to lock in Steel's Nidalee. DFM are one of the few teams in the LJL that use Nidalee well because they are so proficient about playing with Nidalee around strong lanes. They've locked in the set to pair it up with. That could go honestly in 3 roles if Arya is even willing to pick that up. And there's the kind of hard CC I like to see alongside a Nidalee. See what AXIZ look to respond with. Might well be Honey's Ezreal.
Absolutely, though they're just trying to figure out. They want to taunt you there, but they haven't seen a great. Well, they know the jungle pick, but it's not great. Kindred is not very good into Nidalee. You can actually get outbursted with Nidalee and have to pop that ultimate. She can jump away, so it can feel a little sad as the circumstances go around. That Ezreal picked up, obviously, just looking to farm against Ebby. Against Utapon. So this is going to be probably a rather tempered matchup, depending on the direction that we do see with the supports. Obviously, Thresh going away. A Thresh Aphelios, the most dominant bot lane that you can really get for Aphelios, so it'll be important to see. Last time they did this, though, Rel was picked for Gang because they did ban that Thresh, so make notes of that. Nautilus was also banned last time by AXIZ in this exact circumstance, so hey, let's just be real. One of these 2 champions isn't around. Other thing I really want to make clear here, there's a few champions I just want to say in this first pick and ban phase that we might see from DFM or AXIZ. Rumble's one of them for Hoglet, specifically in the jungle. He's been playing a lot of that recently. Kennen, J4, and Rakan are all champions that I do think could be played off during this series or even our next one, so I think it's of note. Also, interesting, Nymera, panic button, please. We're on patch 11.16. Help. This isn't meant to have happened. We've changed patches. I've just noticed. This is very unique. LJL have only done this once before, back in summer 2020. Oh no, spring 2020.
Well, there you have it. We have changed patches during playoffs. Well, that just changed things up a little bit in terms of what is powerful and what is not. Certainly leaves AXIZ to lock in Hoglet's Lee Sin. That still certainly works on 11.16, and Hoglet has done fantastic things on the champion, can do a lot of good work. He nearly got the win against DFM with some really slick moves, or rather, that's a little bit unfair. He tried really hard on the Lee Sin the last time he pulled it out versus DFM. On the other side, though, it's going to be Arya's Rise. He did phenomenal work when he got a hold of that last time. You'll get in Gangs Rakan as well. They've got Steel on the 100% ban against them midly this playoffs as well. Of course, only the 5-game point stands. So this is looking like a lot of comfort for DFM, a lot of power picks for them. They're feeling pretty happy with it right now. Syndra for Megamin is in as well.
Okay, so this is super amazing to see. I'm really excited to kind of see how these two comps kind of play out. Obviously for DFM, this is actually a lot of comfort pick because Nidalee, as you mentioned, the moment it was locked in, this is one of Steel's most comfortable champions outside of that trundle that we saw against Rascal Jester. Though DFM didn't try and play around Steel very much. They just kind of got him the Troll King and were like, okay, we're going to try and do a multitude of different playstyles. And sometimes they got 7-minute stomps. And it was a stomp fest. Other times it didn't quite work out. We had the second longest game in the LJL until obviously AXIZ V3 came along and broke that record. This is front-to-back team fighting from both these teams. Rakan's going to be a huge important one, and I can't wait to see how this goes down. Oh, we got a gang Rakan! This is so sick!
It is exciting. On the other side, I'm looking at AXIZ and I'm going hard CC for Hoglet to go into every lane. We've got ourselves things like Lee Sin, Syndra, which I know pretty much every analyst said, back in, say, Season 9 and stuff, that was the strongest mid 2v2 you could ask. You hit level 6, and whoever gets tagged by a stun or a Lee Sin Q dies. You both press R, and the person in the mid lane dies. So Arya's got to be aware of that. You've got a Renekton top as well for more CC. You look at the bot, there's a Leona to come and set things up, and that means that Hoglet has got places to look early. And I'm looking at Steel, it's like, you've got the set, not bad setup for a Nidalee. You got a Rise, not bad setup alongside things like a Rakan, a little bit harder to work out. But you've certainly got options here for Steel as well. It's just the later the game goes, the more DFM look scary. If they can get past the mid game or get into the mid game without being too far behind, Rise of Felios is so strong just in terms of the scaling. And then you've got Rise on a side lane who can absolutely start to tear open this map as well, which DFM have been known to do before. So going to be an interesting one to see whether AXIZ can get enough done early with the power of all the setup they've got for their jungler. Or I get a little bit worried for them, I think, in the mid game, Lexi.
I mean, I would, but AXIZ do have burst. Like, Syndra can definitely burst someone down with a Renekton. Honey just has to get, like, a QW auto, and that probably will help burst somebody down. Like Arya and Utapon and Steel, to a point, do have to be worried. Gang as well, honestly. Like, this is a pretty, like, highly volatile team that could struggle at certain points. Ebby is going to be the frontline tank, though Ebby playing set tank is kind of, well, we'll see his build in the direction that he truly decides to go with. I am very excited to see kind of how Ino and Nemo, specifically from AXIZ, play some of these team fights. They're going to be kind of the game changers and deciders if DFM get to well and truly run over. Because if they miss some critical ults, if they don't inject and go onto the right targets initialize, it could be pretty terrible for them, because Ezreal and Syndra might be dead before anything even gets started.
At least you have got Ezreal, Syndra into lots of squishy people. So, you hit these mid-game fights, and pretty much everybody you're hitting is like someone you can blow up. So that's kind of nice. So at least if you try to go for the poke war, you've got some options here. Of course, Nidalee plus Aphelios with Calibrum can trade back a bit. So it's not like DFM don't have options, but if it comes down to an attritional war in front of objectives at the mid-game, you're looking at a kind of set going, I will be the beefcake and hope. Whereas,
but then could be a flank from a Rakan.
That's true. You've got to be afraid of that. You really have to be afraid of that. You're completely right.
They also have the Realm Warp, so literally DFM can turn up as a 5-man squad out of nowhere and just remove members. They've got so much CC. They've got displacement. It looks pretty good for DFM, but both these teams are trying to do very similar things. So that's why we're kind of struggling, because it's almost identical comps in a lot of senses. Just minor diversions, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, like, they both got very similar kind of ideas, like early power junglers, though Nidalee, of course, a bit more of a power farmer when she gets to it. You've got setup in lanes. Bit more of a 1-4 comp, I guess, from DFM with the Rise. The Rise is quite flexible, which is why people have done it. You look over at AXIZ, it's like, okay, bit more of a burst comp, bit more of a level 6 mid-game comp with, like, Ezreal Syndra on 2 items and Lee Sin there to help blow people up once you hit level 6. And I suppose for AXIZ, I think that's probably not a bad decision, right? We were saying, look, they need to have Hoglet do things early. They need to rely on the playmaking. Steel finds Hoglet with a really nice level 1 spear there.
Yeah, we are on the Rift now. We've gone for Electrocute Nidalee, which is pretty standard, obviously, with her 3-shot combo. It's very easy to get to enable that. I'm trying to think if there's anything peculiar here. No,
not really, I don't think.
Guardian makes total sense. Yeah, all of yeah, everything here seems pretty reasonable, honestly, in the grand scale of things. Minor diversions, but like it's not on the main rune, so it's getting that kind of minor stuff, which is good for early on. Absolutely important for early on, but obviously as we get scaling, slightly less relevant. But I'm really going to be excited on kind of the pathing that these two junglers do decide to take and kind of where the invades do happen, because we are seeing them. Blitzcrank though just is siding with them. And you have to imagine that's because of Aphelios' win rate, because at the moment he's got one of the highest win rates of all LJL outside of like Jinx.
I feel like Rise has been quite good for the LJL and Aria as well, so I can see that when as Ebby is doing his level 1 shenanigans, he does this every time on set. There is no world where you get to play this lane. The farming is not important. Fighting is all that matters.
I know, fight him.
Not going to be happy with that. Of course, both junglers as well, pathing towards the top lane because they want to play as... I don't need to be a little afraid. That is not what you want to see. Hoglet is hoofing his way towards the top lane alongside Steel, who's trying to do the exact same. We're looking at level 3 dives. Lexi, prepare yourself.
Oh, absolutely. About that Rise stat, though, you were asking for... Rise is 1-1 in playoffs for DFM. Oh, well, for the LJL at the moment, and only Arius played it. He played it those 2 games, if you remember, against Rascal Jester. 1 win, 1 loss. So, not a terrible place. It's a pretty low priority presence champion, actually, at 36%, which is something that we've talked about again. Hey, go listen to our podcast, ladies and gentlemen. That was something we actually referenced because we were like, well, it's really weird, the kind of local meta, as I've been kind of coining that term, of the LJL. Steel is going for something very early on. They're calling for pings, and Hoglet is topside.
Hoglet is here. Ebby's going to be around as well. Ebby needs to be a bit afraid because Hoglet is here as well. So there's the ward. They know what's going on. Ebby's going to think about coming over there. I think you're going on to Hoglet instead here, especially as Ino's now in a kind of forced farm these minions under tower instead. That will stop off the attempted counter dive. Of course, Hoglet's get some count as well as Gang forces Honey to get that argument back in as in goes. And he's got quite deep. He's taken a couple tower shots. That's going to hurt a lot. Takes a Severum auto there with the Calibrum Moonshot coming through to extend that auto range. And it's a bit deep from both supports there. Blinking health bars, but no one is in true danger yet.
No, and with this, the side of AXIZ are aware that Steel would have had to do something different because obviously Hoglet had both buffs on him. There isn't anything there. I know, going pretty deep onto Ebby, and Hoglet is coming around.
Hoglet is coming around. Steel's a long way away. They're going to get the Syndra roaming up. Ebby needs to be afraid. Flashes the Sonic Wave. And now I know it's potentially a little bit too far out. But Ebby is down the Flash, which is scary stuff for DFM. Hoglet with the red buff as well means there's just some more combat stats right now. And Hoglet sticking around gets him the first summoner spell of the game. He's still in this top lane. He wants to be as obnoxious as possible right now.
Well, he's also just trying to help his top laner just make sure he's got the benefit of the doubt and actually can push this wave, can make sure it's going to crash in some capacity. Hoglet has gone back, and that's a full wave going back now. But we know how Ebby plays this. He's just going to freeze in front of the turret and make Ino's life even more difficult. And this set's just going to be waiting till 6. Bot lane advantage. Obviously, Nemo took a huge chunk of damage when he went for an aggressive line of play. Tried to lock down Utapon. Sadly, it was actually onto Gang. Gang just jumped straight back over to Utapon and then took a turret shot. So we're just going to have to wait and see how this bot lane of AXIZ do play out. Obviously, it seems like with that wave that's crashing, it's going to be pretty close in the CS department. No one's really gotten an advantage over one another. The Scuttle Crabs were traded 1-for-1, one topside for DFM bot side here. We are getting a very minor advantage. Well, no, actually, no, both mid laners actually ended up using teleportation to get back. So everything's even at this moment in time outside of Ebby's flash. That's the only thing down. So maybe Hoglet's going to go back after doing a full clear, go back topside and maybe try and find something on Ebby as timers should work out. But outside of that, we haven't got anything happening quite yet.
Yeah, exactly that. And you know, credit to Hoglet for skipping some camps to be there to prevent the dive topside. They come around and trying to kind of like stymie the pressure that Ebby was looking to put on us. Both supports, all junglers, top laners down as well. There is a confluence of players in this bot side or mid of the map. Apologies, not quite bot side as yet. Ebby instead will roam back up top, having seen there's not really much of a play to be had. But Hoglet on vision, but at least warded off some of these early attempts from DFM. So with the fact that AXIZ pretty much even right now, they're probably feeling pretty happy considering how the lanes could have gone with some of the wave states.
For sure, like they could have gone way worse, but at the same time, we were talking this pre-game. These two team comps, they want to kind of do identical things. The thing is, we haven't actually gotten anything for Steel at the moment. He has almost gotten 6. I think Arya should be fine. He's got Realm Warp, so he should be able to just kite out if anything went particularly bad. But hey, the side of AXIZ don't quite have that much engage. They would need to have Ezreal jumping levels with Nidalee jump, and this almost sounds like All for One. Do you remember that crazy League of Legends game mode where bots had like 7 to 10 abilities?
I do remember that one as Nemo misses the Zenith Blade and bots has to get traded on pretty heavily here. So is Honey, actually. Dusk Wave's coming through as well. Lots of damage coming out. Hoglet's in the river as well. Now, Hoglet's in a bit of a difficult position. Needs to think about finding their way out. Megaman face checks Arya, takes a lot of damage. The stun comes through. That Force of Will missing is a bit unfortunate for Megaman. Level 7 does come through for both mid laners, and just some HP bars now being traded and nothing else being going through. Very tight early game as Nemo now starting to look forward to try and get some more damage through Hoglet. Hit level 6 now on Lee Sin. Dragon's Rage available, and that is the next point of playmaking as Steel is in the river, but probably doesn't want to fight the level 6 Lee Sin quite at this point.
No, I do believe next wave, though, for Utapon and Gang, which is the wave that why Gang hasn't really abandoned Utapon too much, because obviously Rakan gets a huge power spike when he does hit 6. Suddenly having that charm completely changes the dynamic, and AXIZ actually have to start playing a little bit differently, because if you go into the Fog of War and you go through a brush and Gang's there with anybody really on the side of DFM, you're dead. You are actually just dead to almost any member. So that's definitely become something they need to be concerned about. Nemo obviously offers that same kind of power, but Gang is kind of in no man's land here. You're not meant to be here, buddy, but he's got fancy feet. Wow.
He does indeed, and that's the crescendum turret going down as well. Utapon does take a true shot barrage. Nemo gets knocked up. Gang comes back over. That's the ignite put down by Nemo. Won that summoner there by going in and forcing some of the trades. That is ult and ignite down for not a lot there really from AXIZ, or from DFM rather. So that'll make the bot lane of DFM pretty happy as Steel and Arya used the opportunity, knowing no one's coming over, to come and take away this Herald. Do so. And now Steel will go back into his jungle and look to find somewhere to put that Herald down.
Yeah, it's a pretty large net advantage. The only thing that AXIZ do get to look at is Hoglet's been very efficient with the farming. He's just been identifying, going, hey, none of my lanes are really set up for me to be able to do much. DFM are very smart. DFM have overwhelming vision control outside of the bot lane. Mid and top side are just owned by DFM vision at this moment in time. A lot of Nidalee traps as well, so it's very easy for Steel specifically to track Hoglet using those, or at least if he goes through a brush where he's not assuming there'll be a trap. Even if he does assume it, sometimes you just have to face check, and it sucks, but that's the nature of the game. Though we're still waiting. Tier stacking up for both these mid laners at this moment in time. The gold is pretty even across the map. Minor advantages, but it's so negligible. It's like, oh, well, that's a wave difference there, or that's not even a wave. That's just like a bit of CS or a cannon or something. So, you know, you don't put too much equity into anything. No one's got an advantage, really. Which
there is a Herald which could get things going. That's the one thing we've got to be aware of. And side of AXIZ, they've got themselves the opportunity to go for this dragon. Steel is around and will likely spot this out. Depends whether he wants to think about coming over and has spotted it. Could think about going over for a steal. He's going in. Could definitely do it. Steals it. Gets straight out as well. Living up to his namesake right there.
Oh my, and immediately he's like, yeah, and straight back to farming. I gotta get my golem camp. I don't care that there's some ward. Yeah, Hoglet, you can take that red, but you can take that pink ward. That's fine by me. I got golems to get. I gotta catch up. And look at that. I mentioned earlier there was about a 10 CS difference between these two junglers.
Okay, that's Nemo coming through, but that's going to be the ult back in trade from Utapon. That's going to be an attempt in from Hoglet, but he gets stunned up because of the quickness. Moonlight Vigil goes wide from a solid flash from Hoglet, but that is now Summoner down for Summoner. Steel flash for Hoglet flash a few moments later. Of course, you can remember you still got the Herald to use at some point over the next few minutes. As I know, just trade up a little bit. Ari is going to take this topside Scuttle Crab, and DFM winning out the neutral objective game right now. In come the jungle and top laner here from DFM and AXIZ respectively, looking to see whether there's anything to get. Megaman needs to be a little afraid. Rune Prism, comes through. The scout of the week, gonna buy time! But one final overload does its work. And that will be Aria picking up first blood for DFM. They've got a Herald as well. Flash just wasn't enough to save him.
And I want to commend Megumin, this rookie mid laner who was from Scouting Grounds, a player that I actually had pegged to be like, hey, this could be a promising talent, but Hoglet!
He's going to try and get in, does get that 1 kill back using that long-range Sonic Wave. Ooh. Good stuff there. Hoglet taken pretty low as well. It does turn out to be a 1-for-1 in the end from some great little fancy feet from Hoglet.
Yeah, but to give credit, Megumin had played this laning phase really well. We are starting to now transition out. That's why we're getting these roams. That's why Nemo was there. That's why it's starting to happen. But he had been playing this lane so well. He was a bit too far up, and Arya felt like he had been disrespected. He flashes on here onto Megumin with that, gets the prism, and after that, it's all said and done. It's just, we know Arya's going to get this. He could run and he could take about 3 or 4 turret shots. Wasn't going to be a concern. Though this is what's impressive from the side of AXIZ. They fully committed, and like, that's threading a needle through a haystack. Like, if you can do it, fair enough. Hoglet's been doing this all playoffs. I'm not even surprised.
Saves the tower going down, honestly, and that's great news.
That's even better.
Yeah, I mean, or at least saves even more players going down. Of course, still a net advantage for DFM, who got first blood, got the turret, got the assist. Well, of course, Megaman didn't get him, but really good credit to Hoglet there for at least getting something back. Does, of course, still leads, as we said, to that slight advantage. It's gold onto Arya, which is a scary thing to give over. He's got Everfrost. He's scaling up. That's all good news for DFM. And now we've got to see, of course, whether they can keep it going. They've certainly got the tools to, but Hoglet, they've got to be able to see whether they can get things done. No worries about that one. For now, at least, we're left with a bit of a lull state. 5 hosts, so 100 gold in the favor of DFM, just over that. We're kind of waiting for our next point of contention. Both neutral objectives kind of spawning in about a minute and a half, and I wonder whether that will be our next point of power. About half a minute as well until those plates fall. So maybe we see some concerted efforts from teams to try and gain those last few options for that, as Gang continues to be super obnoxious. I know it's actually teleported in. Utapon's in a lot of trouble. He's going to try and escape best he can. Flash on the cleanse. Going to keep going as I know, but he does finally get it with the dice on top of the slice. Teleport comes through and gets a hold of that bot laner. Cost a lot to get a hold of him, and it's going to leave both of DFM solo lanes to try and get as much out of this as they can.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's the most important part throughout all of this. Okay, you killed Utapon. That's fantastic for you, AXIZ. But what are you going to get afterwards? They're going to try and dive onto Gang, but they're not going to be successful, and Hoglet is coming around. The dragon is going to be coming up in over the next minute or so, so it's important to maybe think about that. Oh! Hoglet doesn't miss!
Dive to the tower, dives to the tower, and does so. Oh. So 1-for-1, nearly outplayed by Gang, trying to flash the damage on the resonating strike, but it goes for a 1-for-1 again. Another kill over to DFM, but it does keep this one even as it stands, and doesn't quite get the stun. That's so frustrating as Arya trying to be as obnoxious versus Megaman as possible, and the game is just neck and neck, Lexi.
Not only is it neck and neck, this game is just accelerating in its pace. Remember, we went the first 9.5 minutes, not a kill, and then the moment blood got started, everyone wanted to keep going. Gang is very well. Gang and Utapon are very far up here with out limited vision of the side of AXIZ jungle, deep vision. I know obviously just teleports around and they come in. But what's important is if you look at the minimap, Arya did try and rotate around, but then just was like, yeah, no, this play's already over. I'm going to try and push this. Ebby does get a bunch of plates up in topside, so that is pretty worth for him. But Hoglet just landing this Q changes the dynamic of how this goes, because suddenly Gang's not going to be back when Utapon comes back. I wasn't expecting that, though, to be the case, because AXIZ should have had priority, and they're going for the worst neutral objective, which is... okay. Well, Why not? Why not? They're at least getting something. They are benefiting from their play. I'm just very confused because
Yeah,
DFM
I mean,
is not the Dragon stacking team. That's AXIZ's job, and DFM are the Rift Herald stacking team. So they've decided to shake hands and trade places. I think DFM got the better deal in this one.
Potentially have done. Of course, they could try and get this top tier 1. I know has stepped up here. They're going to summon the Heralds. Well, that's looking like possibly first turret with that Herald charge. Of course, Aphelios is down this bot lane looking to get that back there as well, as AXIZ also rotate into the mid lane to try and get as much down there as they can. So going to try and double up on towers here as Ebby just has to kind of sit back and watch a lot of this happen. Can't really afford to step up, especially with Hoglet here. The eye goes down. There's going to be a second charge coming through. Not a lot Ebby can do. Finally shuts it down. Here comes 4 members. Utapon is shoving up on this tier 2. Gang is on alongside that top lane tier 2.
Look at Mega Man.
They are going to lose the second one as well, so they're just going to have to give it up. That will be 2 towers now, as Arya and Steel looks to come in mid lane to make sure it is at least a trade in there as a big spear lands onto Mega Man, who needs to be a bit afraid here. Make that 3 turrets as Utapon gets this one as well. I appreciate AXIZ going for the shot, but DFM just looking to punish as much as they can. And the flash makes more as Honey has to go over the wall as well. Kills are all evened up, and DFM get the better end of the tower trades as well.
And that's why I shouted to you, watch Megumin. He is trying to defend versus multiple members. And what's currently happening to Ebby? Ebby is a veteran. He knows exactly how this is playing out. He's played this circumstance and he's been on both sides of this coin. AXIZ went and fully committed. I commend them for that. The problem is, where was the rest of the map focus? What were you doing across your play? And there wasn't any benefit outside of these 2 turrets in topside. Ebby's looking at this going, I get to play long lane now. This is perfect. I have Steel in my jungle. I can just completely set up for ganks for Steel. He can come topside and we can start playing around a Baron if we ever want to. Like, DFM have actually looked at this and gone, our map is going to be in a preferential state where now Ino can't play laning phase. He doesn't have the option to play an extended laning phase because there is no lane now. And DFM always have the safety of going back into their jungle, back into darkness. AXIZ haven't got that deep vision set up yet, and they have to set this up now, or basically they can't do anything topside. So I actually think this is a huge advantage for DFM because they've cracked open most of the base of the side of AXIZ. And think about bot side, that's where they wanted the turrets to go down for DFM because they want to set up around these dragons. So honestly, I think this is not only huge net advantage to DFM, I think AXIZ made a slight blunder because they didn't think out about the rest of the map.
Exactly. It's where it's the gold kind of placement. There's a word for where it's been put.
So I always use funneling. I always use the funneling.
That'll work for now. There's a point where the gold is on the right members of DFM. It's on theirs. It's on Arya. It's on Utapon. 2 of the biggest damage threats. On the other side, it's mostly on Ino for AXIZ, who's like, yeah, it's nice to have you an X in ahead early, but if it's coming at the cost of Utapon and Arya being a long way ahead of their oppositions, that's not necessarily what you want to see in terms of your goals. Hoglet goes in, gets stunned up, gets knocked down, and that is Arya getting that one as well. He went in too deep, and Gang turns around. Now Nemo has to flash out. Steel thinking going over the wall and pounces right over it. Now with the jungler dead, that big playmaker, it's going to lead to DFM shoving in for this tier 1 as Megamin unleashes the power on Steel, who hops away from the stun. Now with some of those key ultimates down and their jungler dead, DFM will likely break this final outer turret.
Remember, we haven't heard from Honey this game yet. Him and Utapon were trading blows with Nemo and Gang both doing the same as well. They were looking for plays, looking for those minor advantages because both these bot lanes are so used to winning. Just full stop. They are so good at getting a minor advantage and then looking at the team and going, play around me. I will be that carry. Both these bot laners can do it. They're both on champions, which they can do it on. This is going to be a hyper carry focused series initialized. We know that because of both these AD carries, because of how the LJL has been playing around. Mountain Dragon's going to be up in 30 seconds, and both these bot laners, I think, are about to become online and well and truly controlling the pace of this game moving forward.
Yeah, the problem is you look at Arya and he's already got 2 items complete, and this would be Mountain Soul Point for DFM. AXIZ have to fight this. They have to do so now, but they've got to be aware. Ebby's got the teleport. He's shoving up this top side. So does Ino, and they both can think about coming down. DFM are actually thinking of just giving this one up and looking to shove in for more gold. They can give up a dragon if they want. They might just look to punish.
Oh, Arya also has TP.
Yeah, he does indeed. They've both got TP. They're thinking of just giving this one up. The ward there saves Ino's life. And DFM just going to give this on up. They don't really want to fight right now. Sans a couple summoners. The spear won't come through, so there will be no stolen dragon. And DFM just give this one up. Instead, look to try and get some damage onto this tier 2. Doesn't really get as much as they'd like, as AXIZ now trying to rotate up best they can. Second wave comes in, and actually now I start to think about it, maybe they do get a little bit more, as here come the rest of AXIZ. Gang manages to grand entrance his way. There we go, that's the way that actually phrases. Away from all the danger. And leaves us with a gold gap of about 2,500 in favor of Detention FocusMe. They've given up one dragon, but that was the opportunity cost for getting serious drunk onto that tier 2. I think probably does favor AXIZ in the end on that one, as they don't really manage to get a hold of the tower.
It does, though the gold didn't really sway either any direction. The experience pretty much negligible. They did get a lot. They bullied Ino in this top side, but he's been playing this weak side really well, and I want to commend Ino on that, because doing this against Ebby is never easy. Hasn't died in the 1v1 quite yet, so credit where credit's due. At this point, it's going to be a team effort, and Hoglet just seems to have like a radar on his cues at the moment. This man on this Lee Sin doesn't miss.
He's trying.
What we need to consider is that the last Dragon play, Utapon wasn't set up. He had gone back to base. He had just brought. He got that. He's gone for a Bloodthirster. So it's important to remember that that's why DFM weren't really interested. They got an item power spike. Probably hoped that AXIZ weren't going to just try and burst it down as it spawned. AXIZ was smart. They just did. They were like, we've got everybody here. Let's go for it. We got a party. We know where two of their their mid and top is. Go for it. They were able to secure that dragon. If they didn't have that kind of commitment and just knowledge that they need to make plays, the proactiveness, they could have fallen behind. DFM could have taken that, and Steel was looking for another steal anyway.
Yeah, got to call it out as well. You know, Utapon has gone for that Gale Force for a little bit more mobility. He's locked in that Bloodthirst second to try and do what the Immortal Shield Bow would have done for him, which is, of course, this shield and all that lifesteal. So trying to get the best of both worlds there with a slightly deferred build. If they're going to try and recall his way out of danger here as well. And this is where the 1-3-1 comes in from DFM. They've got the set. They've got the rise. Gonna try and get this recall again, and Ebby once again times it just right and gets himself out of danger. And DFM gonna continue to try and tear the map open, pull apart AXIZ's kind of danger combos, all the sort of CC into burst they can bring.
Yeah, this top side, the gold is definitely very slowly starting to sway heavily in Ino's favor. It's been a slow burn of 23 minutes, but you can just see that Ino has a fully completed item. Ebby doesn't, and he's actually halfway through his build. He's not completed. He brought a Ruby Crystal and then was like, I'm gonna just sell that. I'm not gonna have this. I'll get the pink ward. We'll be safe. We'll play a bit defensively. Hopefully, once I can get my second item, obviously he'll get more space, and he's just gonna go back to farming this bot side. AXIZ need to keep pressuring DFM, because I do side with you on what you said in this pre-game. The side of AXIZ does not scale into the late game that DFMs do. Because, yeah, we've got the man who asked how many years have we got in game design, with the man that has also been redesigned more than any other champion in League of Legends. Yeah. So, yeah, we've definitely got scaling for days for the side of DFM. AXIZ do have scaling. Like, Ezreal is very good late game, right? Like, we know that. But Hoglet's finding Ebby here, and ooh, they're going to trade.
This one, actually. Here comes Gang and Utapon. They need to be a little afraid as Hoglet. Now going to walk away. He's like, okay, do not want this fight. Might have a couple kills, but you don't really want to fight the set at this point in the game.
Ebby will always fight.
Yeah, it's kind of his thing. We're kind of the one thing I will say for AXIZ, you know, the things like Syndra, things like Ezreal, later the game goes, they're still going to have people they can blow. They're still going to have options to kill people. It's not like they don't have options in the late game to AXIZ. It's just DFM, the later the game goes, have got so many options in things like the side lanes with the realm walks and all the rest of it that
and
it does get a little bit scary for AXIZ to be able to play the map. By the time they have been playing the 1-3-1 right now. That's what they've been doing for the last 3 or 4 minutes.
Yeah, but we've just not seen those Aria realm warps that we saw from some of the Rascal Jester series, where they, in that game number 1 versus Rascal Jester, they were doing these like 3-4 man shuffles around. We haven't seen that yet. That doesn't mean DFM won't do it, because they very much will if they feel like they can get a pick on a few members and have a numbers advantage. Oh my God, Hoglet.
We went for a kick, doesn't really get a lot for it, but that's now the kick down before this dragon fight. Honey's down to half HP as well from something landing. And that's going to be a big one. Flash and Hoglet as well, as he tried to get behind the Rakan. And with the mid tower down, they lose control over the wave. DFM get to secure themselves Mountain Soul Point, and Hoglet went to look for a creative engage. It just didn't work out.
That's the one champion really on the side of DFM, outside of maybe Steel if he's in Cougar form, that I would never do that onto, because Rakan is maybe the slipperiest champion in the game. Like quite literally, as AXIZ missed every bit of CC, Nemo is sometimes me in solo queue. Do you ever have it initialized where there are some games where you can't miss? You actually couldn't miss if you were trying to. You try and bet money on yourself to miss a skill shot. And then you have other games where you actually can't hit. And you're like, what is going on with me? No, because let's give ourselves some credit. We either hit or miss, and it's the duality that we have to experience. We're either perfect every game, or our perfection is so good that we miss everything because our opponents are not doing what we expect them to do.
Got to give our opponents a solo queue some hope, you know? Just
well, yes, and they're also not doing what they should be doing. That's why we're missing, because it's all their fault, obviously. It's not my fault. It's not my fault as the support Leona that misses their Zenith Blade for the 7th time in a row.
Yeah, I mean, I don't blame them looking for the pick. The Dragon went down.
No, absolutely.
Would face check. Baron is on the board and down an 80 carry. Suddenly you can definitely look for that, but...
Yeah, and at that point, DFM didn't have vision around the map. They didn't. It was fog of war, so AXIZ absolutely should have done that.
Of course, all the while, we've got items that have been coming through. Aria's hit 3 items very early. Still a bit of a garage sale in Megumin's infantry. And
Honey has also done that.
Yeah, I expect Udipon's just waiting to back to complete his.
Probably.
Because they're going to be on very similar gold, one imagines. You can see it in his infantry. He's got himself the pickaxe and the crit cloak, looking for that Infinity Edge, which is oh so expensive, just waiting around on that, but does leave an option here as Steel gets kicked. Goes Golden, buys time, but that's Gang getting stunned and going down. Now Hoglet getting stunned as well. I know has teleported in, and this might be the fight that we're looking for. That is the use of the unstoppable force to buy some time. It's going to be Ivy in the backline going down. Honey gets that one, and DFM have lost the fight of a critical flank. And area and Unipon trying to turn some things around. They at least get one back. There's 2 dead already. As Aria was looking to get on Megaman, who hit the flash back out. But it's Aria against the world, doing so much damage. He's going to overload. He's going to spell flux, and he'll get his way out of danger for now. And somehow, some way, it's going to be a 2 for 3. But Aria spares the blushes and prevents the Baron start.
And absolutely, this is what we've seen from DFM. If you remember back to that Rascal Jester series, a criticism we had was that DFM would always keep fighting, and the fact is they wouldn't take an L in a team fight. This is a scenario where DFM absolutely should have just taken the L. It sucks that Steel got kicked, but the moment that happened, and the moment you realize you had a numbers disadvantage, you can't keep going for this. So quickly, it's very obvious that there are going to be 5 members of AXIZ, and they needed to disengage very quickly. The problem was this came too late in. Aria even tried to realm warp to try and escape, but IB had placed this front line. The fact is, there is absolutely no right in this scenario. God, Udipon's so good that the side of DFM should ever win this one. Aria goes complete man mode. But what's important is all the health bars of AXIZ. They were all so low, and that's Ebby. That is actually Ebby just doing that. He was getting 3-man ultimate. He got the face breaker across 2 people, plus a pure going across. Oh my! That's why I said Ebby 3k damage. But Aria and Utip, are the stars of the show.
Yeah, they are, and that's after Hoglet found the flank he's been looking for all game. Finally gets a critical kick. Just Aria gets to free fire at the end of it, and that's the problem here. That extended damage is so good from DFM if they get the chance. Finally, AXIZ will be able to secure this mid lane outer turret. It's only 1,000 gold that's separating this game. Aria all the while going to try and get in. That will be a missed solar flare, but Gang still goes. Now, if he's into the backline, he's going to try and get a big flank. Honey left in the middle of no man's land. The Duskwave's not quite enough. Nemo goes down. Steel is here. That will be Honey going to try and escape. The Realm Warp's coming through to try and get him, and they're going to double onto Aria. They went too deep on the tower dive, and now Hoglet needs to run away. But with the bot lane dead in trade for only Gang, DFM could try and turn and look at Baron.
Absolutely. Mandrake is going to be up in 40 seconds, so the side of DFM are going to probably try and see if they can burst this out, or at least bait the members of AXIZ around for this. AXIZ completely committing to this, but they're too early for this Dragon. The fact is, DFM can take this Baron and actually rotate back around. They're very healthy at the moment. They were ate some honey fruit, and now this is DFM with Baron. This is prime DFM. There isn't any TPs out, so a lot of the members are going to get very late onto this Mountain Drake. They might have to just give it over, but it's well and truly worth for the side of AXIZ to just kind of go. Yeah, go for it.
Let's just go. Do they fight for this Mountain Soul? They could look for it. There's stopwatch in inventory for Udapon. There's double. There's not quite a depth cap.
They're not there.
Good lord, is he strong? Yeah, AXIZ are gonna have. Honey's just not here. He's still coming out of base. He's still respawning. That's a stun. Doesn't really get that much damage through. The True Shot Barrage at least gets something more. But it is, of course, that primal surge from Steel that brings his health bar back up. That's starting to make a lot of this point in the game. Dragon is going to be started by AXIZ. Hoglet on the back. He's looking for a flank right now. Where is Arya? Where are
Remember
DFM?
those power spikes initialized. Arya's 18, Ebby's 16, Megamin's 15, Inno's 15.
Gang. Gang doesn't really get the best quickness, but that's IB into the backline, trying to buy space, gets a big showstopper and face breaker, healing up best he can, trying to escape. Gang now getting stunned up. I know into the backside, does go golden. FP is low as well, and DFM have lost this one. They're going to try and potentially keep fighting. Megamin so low from a javelin toss. Going to get a massive calibrum. He's got quite enough, even with the active from the Gravitum. The Eclipse just not there. Binding Eclipse. They don't miss enough. Arya going to shove up in mid lane. He's going to keep going. The Dragon is taken by AXIZ, but they got 2 members. DFM going to try and stop some backs here as well. Megamin and Hoglet can't retreat to base. Steel is here, and he manages to stop a load of those backs. He manages to get a little bit more out of that one, but that was a bit sloppy from DFM. They look for an engage. They don't really get it, and I know in the front line turnaround.
I would actually disagree with you. I think they did get the engage they wanted. Look at Hoglet here. He came through and missed every single member of DFM. The problem was the committing from DFM. Look at Arya. For the longest time at the beginning of this fight, he's just not with them, and no one goes onto the backline of AXIZ. They just get completely kited, and then DFM have to play this very awkward back-footed game because they lost their front line, because guess what? They weren't there with them. A lot of damage goes out afterwards, and this just shows the kiting capabilities. If DFM's front line is able to kind of play with their backline a little bit, this should have been night and day different. Arya and Utapon just didn't have the opportunity to actually get that damage down, and that partly comes down to them, partly comes down to positioning, and also partly comes down to Ebby and Gang and how they start that fight. It wasn't good for DFM. They went for a Hail Mary, kind of tried to make up for being caught out. Second time we've seen that for them in this match. Hopefully third time's the charm for them, or maybe AXIZ will start to close the door on them.
Still 10 seconds on this Baron. They finally get that last outer turret, so that is a bit more gold in for DFM. They get a bit more out of it. They wanted the man in soul as well. They were being so greedy for it in some ways. They didn't have the vision, and kind of didn't work out for him in the end. But now Hoglet needs to be a little afraid here. Gang hasn't really found the engages for he was looking for this game. 0-4-2 is not what we come to expect from this guy on the champion, but he's still got the abilities as a champion. He's still got the eye for the flank, even if it has been a little bit scary with all the bursts that's been coming through. And I know, according to Melvinus, we'll just throw a word out in chat, allegedly looking like Godzilla in these team fights, and can't really disagree. He's been such a force in this front line, did so much work to get in and turn around the attempted engage from DFM after Hoglet prevents the easy follow-up as well. Maybe, just maybe, AXIZ can still pull it back in this game. Still down Mountain Soul point. They're only down 1,000 gold, 2,000 gold. Which isn't really all that much at 34 minutes into the game. Still a while until this Baron spawns again, but it's the map control that's really hurting AXIZ right now. There's so many turrets that are down for them that it gets quite difficult the later this game goes. Just look at Arya, 5-0-1 on this rise. So damn strong, Lexi.
He's a absolute giant, but also I know looks like Godzilla at the moment because he's just playing the front line honestly better than Ebby in these team fights, and that is a well and true fact. If I want to highlight something, the members of DFM that are the engaged, that are the team fight initiators of Gang and Ebby, haven't been finding the flanks that we were expecting, and the reason that they that AXIZ are winning this is Nemo and Ino, those two rookies opposite sides of the map. They've come together in harmony as best friends, but DFM
Here we go.
are angry.
It only takes one, and Honey's got nothing left. He's dead. That's so important. Now Hogley to try and get out Nemo. Going into the backside. Aria's been stunned, though. He goes golden. Trying to buy space. Hasn't got flashbang. I know in the front line gets a shield. Trying to buy space. Gets the shot down. Epi with the showstopper in the back line gets Hogler, and he will go down as well. That will be a 2-for-2. And somehow these fights keep going. But I'm even.
They're so close to going heavily in one or another of these two sides. Baron is going to be up in 40 seconds, as is this Dragon in 1 minute, but neither of these teams have a big enough advantage to go for anything because so much gets used in these team fights. We'll have to see, because Initialize, these fights just keep getting spicier and spicier. Everyone will be up in time for this Baron and or Mountain. Arya has TP, so that's going to be something, as well as Ebby. They've also got the Realm Warp, so the side of DFM, any and all of those ultimates should be up in time for this next team fight. Same case scenario for the side of AXIZ. The only difference is it's going to be that teleportation. So I know hasn't TP. Gonna have to be playing around that. No flash, Arya, no flash, Gang, no flash. But Ebby will have his one, so Ebby's got tools for it. The side of DFM.
I know as well, being down the flash is really important. He's been so good with those flashes. Hoglet respawning late, remember, he died. That was important. They're going to try and get this one out. True Shot Barrage comes over, but that will be Baron secured, and DFM find themselves at the second Baron. That was the important one. Here comes the Realm Warp. They're looking to get over for this Dragon fight. Big damage onto Gang. That's pretty good damage from Honey. It's important. Ebby now trying to trade back. They're going to try and get as much damage onto Nemo as they can. He gets shot down alongside Hogler. That's two already for DFM. Honey as well gets flashed on by Ebby. It was going to be important. You called it. I know gets hit by the moonshot. And the chakrams fly from downtown. Utapon might not be a ninja, but those shurikens sure make it look like one. And now Megaman has to run for the hills. The javelin toss goes wide. But DFM say screw the mountain. So we got 4. We found the team fight we were looking for. We're going to end this game instead.
I'm so glad I highlighted that, because I know played like an absolute machine. Honey is trying to put out as much damage as possible, but Ebby with the MVP caliber of play. This is why DFM are scary in playoffs, but look at them.
AXIZ tried. Their team fights were really clean from the likes of Ino and from Nemo to keep things close. But the Baron secures. But those early objective focuses from DFM win them the game after a final critical team fight for them.
It really was the side of DFM. There were moments where I was very concerned. The two opposite sides of the map, Ebby and Gang, I was a little bit questioned, but of course, it only takes one, like you said, Initialize, and they found it. So well played by the side of DFM. Why did I ever doubt them? Why did I ever think there was going to be any doubt?
Well, you asked for a Realm Warp play, you said watch Ebby's flash, and it certainly worked out for them in the end. They found that last fight, but to break it down a little bit more, we're going to cut to ourselves to a quick break. When we're back, the analyst desk will break this one down in significantly more depth. Don't go anywhere. Here, there's even some fancy drawing techniques we're bringing out this time.
Ooh.
So hold our heads up high and beat the drum to what we love. Risk the fall, or we have felt it all come crashing down from far above. Stars are rising, countless worlds colliding. Only one will take it all. Can we bring to fall the giants? Can we make the final call?
Welcome back, everybody. What an opening game. The end result might not have been a surprise, but how we got there proved to be a lot closer and a lot more dramatic than we were initially expecting. I mean, some things, well, Arya still did Arya things for sure. However, AXIZ, they showed up to play, be it a Shark, be it a Narwhal. They're all League of Legends player at Middlecott. I'm looking to you. How did they keep the first half of that game so close?
Well, that's the crazy thing, because it was very close throughout the entire game. Even up until those late game team fights, it was only a couple of thousand gold difference in it, and we were really talking about the solo lanes from DFM being the strongest players in their role, both currently and historically, in the LJL. And honestly, AXIZ stood their ground in the early game. There was that level 1 top lane where Ino gets denied a bunch of CS, but he's ultimately able to come back into the lane.
And they don't dive. They stave off the dive. So
They stave off the dive. And whilst Megamin was focused out a couple of times early on, never really felt like he was put in a place where he couldn't do anything. And that meant that as we got towards the mid-game, AXIZ were actually able to go toe-to-toe with DFM in some team fights.
Yeah, it really did feel like, through most of that mid-game, AXIZ were playing that competitive game of League of Legends. I mean, I was always watching Honey because it's Honey. How could you not? Did a great job in just sidestepping so much of the damage thrown their way. But I could say the same thing about Arya. That flash play we saw was sick in that mid lane. That got a pop out of me. But as we did approach later and later and got to some of those late game team fights, well, we're actually going to throw it to Namira to sort of break it down a bit, what was actually happening.
there we are. So, bear with me while we deal with my graffiti on whatever clips I so choose. We're going to go through
we're
two
tagging
team
the
fights
rift
and see how they went differently for these two teams. So in this first one, this is going to be, of course, the fifth Drake of the game. You're looking at DFM on Soul Point, but importantly, no flash. No summoners here either, and Hoglet does. So there's a difference in the ability for the backlines to stay safe, and particularly because AXIZ have the longer range carries in the Syndra and the Ezreal, they're happy to split up the fight at this point. So without further ado, let's get into it. This is how the setup starts coming through, as lots of pixels appear on the screen. It's all well and good that DFM have themselves in the river, but if AXIZ can split up the fight, regardless of how they achieve it, that the range advantage that AXIZ have is going to put them at a real benefit. You can see right here, Gang goes in, uses the combo, but Hoglet is exactly where he wants to be. He can threaten here, he can threaten here, and there's a problem, of course, where he misses his Q, but immediately there is all of the damage from DFM clumped up back here. That's great, but I mean, Hoglet is already disengaged. Ebby is going to have it a much harder time to do this. So AXIZ have split up the team fight in the way that they want. Yes, the Solar Flare misses, but the damage is kind of already done. DFM have used their mobility at this point, and Ino gets to roll forward and use the stopwatch for a very important fight. That's what happens when AXIZ get themselves the fight where they want, where things are split up. This is later into the game where we see what happens when DFM get to start calling the shots themselves, finish off the objective like this Baron, and of course use a scary Realm Warp at first, but at least get into the midst of things with huge amounts of items. A level 18 rise is absolutely insane to fight against. Great stun coming out of Megamin, but as soon as everyone's in position, Ebby is much happier to engage, has the flash, and AXIZ kind of dives straight into the Dragon's Maw. Look at this. They go straight in with the Leona and the Lee Sin, but the damage is here at this point where you don't get to disengage. As soon as you're in, you best finish that fight, otherwise this happens, and DFM run away with the fight when they get to take it on their terms in the closer range confrontations.
Watching that last fight back a bit as well, I kind of feel like it also almost looked like AXIZ was a bit disjointed in how they were approaching it, because you saw that great kick from Hoglet throwing Arya towards what could have been the back line, but the other half of the team seemed to be pressing into the jungle. And obviously in team fight situations, high stress situations, you want everyone to be on that same page, which is why I'm going to throw it back to Middlecott. You're the one who picked AXIZ to win. You see fights like that go down. Are you still, feeling confident that AXIZ is going to come out in this series?
So the thing for me is obviously losing game one, not going to be great for AXIZ, but the most important thing for me is they actually kept it competitive, and they kept it competitive until later on into the game. They're drafting Syndra, Lee Sin, Leona. These are champions that traditionally need to spike fairly hard in the early to mid game. Otherwise, it becomes a little bit difficult to do stuff with them later on into the game. Didn't really happen. AXIZ didn't build themselves a big lead, but they were still able to go toe to toe with DFM up until that final fight. So for me, I'm actually looking at this fairly confidently. If I'm AXIZ right now, though, I'm a little bit worried about Honey's champion pool. Because whilst the Ezreal was good, there were a couple of nice Mystic shot combos landing and doing the damage that you needed to in teamfights, but it isn't that big, reliable thing like the Jinx, like the Aphelios. And we've seen from DFM, they don't seem too keen to hand him either of those.
I think
Yeah,
if they're
and-
on blue side, it makes it easier because DFM
Yeah.
would have to ban an extra champion. DFM ban away the champions they want to first pick the Aphelios, and that was the killer for me.
Yeah.
Absolutely, but the thing is, and this is the problem, Nightmare, they're never going to be on the blue side. They're on red side all series long, as you can kind of see in the graphic that's kind of come up at some stage. Like, and if you can't see it, yeah, spoiler alert, AXIZ is going to have to play red from start to finish throughout the series. So my question to you, I suppose, Nightmare, in this situation, do you just continue to try and ban out Honey? Is that going to be the catalyst for Detonation to just win this entire series?
It's certainly the point which I'm worried about for AXIZ. I mean, I think that middle cot's hit the nail on the head. What happens when your hyper carry doesn't have a hyper carry? I think that the Ezreal is fine in this game, but when you're giving over, I mean, because Yutspon's no slouch either. Arya certainly isn't too, and they got the scaling advantage. I think the bigger thing for me here is that AXIZ, like we saw in that second team fight, had a range advantage, but didn't really know how to use it. That's the big thing for me. So while the early game was very good at staving off the top lane wave crash dive, the slow push dive from Ebby into Ebby going down to mid lane, actually DFM found very little out of their standard textbook early game plays. AXIZ didn't execute in the later game team fights, and that's a worry for me because it felt like they had the tools to do so.
Well, we'll see if they're able to right that ship and find those later game team fights. They're going to have to if they're going to need to win this series, but one step at a time. First, you have to take game number 2, and I don't think Detonation's just going to be willing to hand that one over. Now, we're going to be taking a quick break. It won't be too long, I promise, and when we come back, we'll be kicking off our second game of the series. Stay with us. More League of Legends when we return.